This week, the sun within us, consciousness life, activates the 53rd I Ching. The transformational path of this frequency moves us from the shadow of immaturity to the highest vibration of superabundance, and it's through the path of expansion. The 53rd shadow of immaturity points us in a single direction, that immaturity is the stage in human evolution in which we have not yet learnt to look inwardly for the resolutions to our own problems. And this whole I Ching spans the spectrum from externally fixated to internally grounded. And this is actually a controversial viewpoint, so let's explore in more depth. You see, the thing is, we live in this Maya, in this illusion, where things are not what they seem. And if you've been exploring the I Chings with me, taking in my weekly videos, you have heard this idea over and over again. It's kind of like the movie The Matrix, the realization that the world that we live in is a construct, a mental projection. And we too live in that world, that construct, in which we believe what is before us. And we become victims of what life brings us. And we become lost in the dramas of life and the dramas of life of the people around us. And of course, some of you may get angry hearing this kind of thing. You may ask, what about my friend that is dying of cancer? Or what about the children that are starving? There's nothing illusory about that. Listen, I know this world is filled with intense suffering. That is an obvious truth. But the real question is, how do we deal with that suffering? How do we meet it? This seems to be the question that dictates maturity. The 53rd I Ching is about the new. It's about beginnings. It's the energy to start again. And at a deep esoteric level, it governs the cycles of life, what we call incarnations. And I always hesitate when I speak about the subject of incarnation or reincarnation, because I also know it as a relative truth, because at a certain point of our evolution, this too gets transmuted. This too is a controversial topic that triggers opinions, so try to suspend any opinion until the end of the video. That may be helpful. I'm just using this opinion to express a truth. And the parody is that when our incarnations are over, when we're finally free, we come to realize that there were no separate incarnations. It was all a game, a film, a divine play. And once our awareness is realized from that drama, then we no longer need to participate, because there's no longer a sense of separateness to incarnate. So in the meantime, it is helpful to talk about these things in the context of this I Ching and its shadow. You see, there's immaturity on many levels. There is immaturity within a single lifetime as we grow up, as we learn from our mistakes, and hopefully become wiser and more mature. And then there is this kind of incarnation maturity as our consciousness increases in light over many, many cycles and lifetimes. Let's think about flowers, how different flowers bloom at different phases of the season. Some bloom in early spring, and at the other end of the spectrum, some flowers don't bloom until autumn or winter, but they're all just as beautiful. So let's get out of morality here. So flowers perhaps are a good example, because there are humans that are immature on an incarnation level, and then there are those who are more mature, but there's no judgment in this. You see, Earth is a school, and once we have taken the classes and we passed our exam, we are free. New classmates are arriving all the time. These new classmates are not really individuals. It's tempting to see them as separate souls, because really, they're just consciousness, the same stuff as those who have graduated. It's as though all the background radiation from the Big Bang has evolved over time, and that one aspect flowers early and one flowers late in the game. That doesn't make the underlying consciousness any different at all. And the dilemma of this shadow of immaturity is restlessness. When the new consciousness arrives at school, it has so much to learn. The greatest thing to learn is that the outer life can never, ever offer genuine fulfillment. So we have many incarnations where we seek pleasure or run from pain, until that day when we question the whole game of life. Perhaps you remember when you first questioned the game. I wonder what it was that you responded to that opened that door. Perhaps you were drawn to a book, a teacher, a guide, a bright human example that embodied a deeper maturity than usual. Or perhaps it was an extreme crisis, a death of a loved one that turned you inward. Whatever it was, it led you here to listen to this. The 53rd I Ching is part of the ring of seeking. It drives us to seek. Our restless spirit has to go through an exhausting search, this great quest, and eventually that becomes our spiritual quest. So perhaps you're beginning to see what I mean now by immaturity. So how fixated are you by the outer world, by the events of life? It's all brought to you through your karma, which is created out of your past lives. Everything is linked back to a cause. There is divine justice at work that is utterly invisible to us. There are places of immaturity in all of us. And as we begin to evolve, spiritually evolve, we gradually shake off these immature patterns. And this takes time. We all have blind spots. So ask yourself, where are your blind spots? Where are you still playing the victim? It's likely to be the biggest focus of life right now. Suffering is like that. It dominates our consciousness. The 53rd gift, the way to alchemize the shadow and raise the vibration, expansion. So what happens when we mature? What does the process of maturity look like? Is there anything we can do to speed up the process? That's definitely the question of our era. And it's ironic because the very question comes from the shadow, from restlessness. So the very question is wrong. It's only when we begin to understand this question inside us that we begin to slow down, we begin to mature. Isn't it funny that maturity always seems to involve slowing down? The mature person is older and slower. The mature river is wider and slower moving. So one of the hallmarks of maturity is slowness. So maturity is rooted in slowing down. It's also a stage in our seeking. Sooner or later, we always learn this spiritually. The art of meditation, of contemplation, of prayer, of breathing. You know, we have to learn to breathe again more deeply. And when we do, that's when we begin to see things more clearly. We see life as though in slow motion. Our rhythm may slow down, but our awareness quickens. Our intelligence heightens, and we become more refined. Life becomes more efficient, effective, and we enter into a period of gradual expansion. And this gift of expansion needs to be understood clearly. Expansion can be balanced, or it can be imbalanced. For example, you can overexpand your business so that it becomes a liability and a danger to the whole. So expansion is not necessarily a good thing, and overexpansion is another sign of immaturity. So maturity knows that expansion must be balanced. So the gift of expansion is really about the expansion of awareness, the expansion of love, and the expansion of creativity. These three together create the perfect harmony. Awareness without love can be cruel. Love without awareness can be painful. Creativity without love can be reckless, etc., etc. I hope you're getting the picture. So expansion really refers to a ripening of our spirit. And when our spirit ripens, then life tends to move naturally towards balance, because life is a holistic phenomenon. We tend to compartmentalize life. We think of our relationships as one thing, our family as another, our work as another, our health as another. But these are all really one thing. An expansion in one area only creates an imbalance. So maturity is to allow expansion to ripen through the whole of life. And the secret to this is effortlessness. Expansion comes without effort. It emerges naturally, slowly, and quietly. And it brings calmness rather than excitement. It brings simplicity rather than complexity. It brings perspective rather than ambition. And it all comes through slowing down. So expansion then also takes place over lifetimes. And in the esoteric law, there's this expression, the permanent atom. There is this notion that there's a single atom in our being that is carried over between lifetimes, and it carries the charge of the karma within it. Mystically, this is called the causal body, which represents all the good that we have learned in all the cycles of lifetimes, which gets stored eternally in this atom, and over time, that atom begins to glow. And the more it glows and radiates, the brighter the spirit becomes. And this is an aura of an expanded state of awareness. And such a state of consciousness has learned that the problems of the world can only be solved from within when we go down to the root. You can stop a war on the outside, but it will only spring up somewhere else. Suffering is like that. The more you try to solve it, cut it off externally, the more it springs up. And this is not to say that we shouldn't try to help others. On the contrary, one of the primary means to transcend suffering is to serve others selflessly. So this selfless service is part of our expansion. You can't expand without serving others in some way. Service is a byproduct of love. So the gift of expansion is about turning all this restless energy of the shadow back to its own source. Remember, it's how we deal with our suffering. Can we use it as a means to expand our awareness, or do we let it overwhelm us and crush our spirit? The 53rd gift uses suffering to expand. This is its greatest gift. It uses the difficulties and the traumas of life as creative fuel. The 53rd I Ching and its programming partner, the 54th I Ching, are two of the most driven energies in the whole I Ching matrix. They either drive you mad, make you go crazy, or they drive you towards enlightenment and great wisdom. The 53rd city, the highest vibration, superabundance. Can one have more than abundance? Well, the prefix super, it comes from Latin. It means above or beyond. And this is what gives us the key to the 53rd city. It's actually beyond abundance. In the modern new age, everyone's looking for abundance. Have you noticed that? We have all these affirmations, and there's nothing wrong with that. Humans have always prayed to the gods for abundance, and that is part of expansion. But superabundance, that is of a different dimension. What it really means is that abundance no longer matters. You know, expansion is the other side of contraction. The universe expands, the universe contracts, life and death. Superabundance is a state beyond them both. It's beyond seeking. It lies at the end of the quest, the end of the rainbow. Superabundance is where everything springs from. It's a mystery. Superabundance is being. It's being here and now, being with what is. It isn't abundance. It doesn't care about whether there's abundance or not. It's beyond all agendas. It's the abundance of love with what is. I empower you this week to create space, get to higher awareness, notice your thoughts, feel all the sensations fully that come up in the body. Shine the light of awareness to what you're focusing on this week. Where you put your attention to, that energy will expand. Breathe in, breathe out. Remember, love yourself and choose to be blessed.